What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So one of the strange things Nintendo has had to deal with this generation for the Switch are freely available emulators on PC that will actually play some Switch games better than the Switch itself. And at times, games will leak online and they can get them before the game actually releases to Switch owners. What looks like one of those very popular Switch emulators pushed things a bit too far and it backfired very, very quickly on them. We'll talk about what happened there exactly. Also, the Series S is out in about a week now, and one seems to have gotten out online a bit early, and the actual storage size that will be available to you when after the system takes everything it needs was also revealed, and it seemed to shock a lot of people. But we'll go over all that and more today, guys. If you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're brand new here, hit the red subscribe button down below. And we're going to start today with Bakugan. The embargo is now up, and there was a lot of excitement before it was revealed that it was Bakugan that was at that Treehouse event. Remember that? We had the Paper Mario gameplay they showed, and then they were like, oh, we're gonna show some other game here. People got real excited, and then I said, prepare for disappointment. Well, let's take a look at the Metacritic score for this game, and yeah, it's a 47, and if you look at the critic reviews, it's not great, and it goes down as far as Nintendo World Report giving it a 10. No, really, a 10, and a lot of it has to do with the overall lack of polish for this game, the repetitive nature of it, the visuals, basically everything. In fact, there was this really funny thing that I saw Go Nintendo spot, and it was really just files missing. Text for localization completely missing, and what's great is the game kind of throws it up there like it's this big dramatic thing, and it's basically saying, yeah, we're missing the file that's supposed to be here. I mean, look, I know there was a lot of hope after Cyberpunk got pushed out of the kind of the window for the Video Game Awards this year that Bakugan could kind of sneak in for Game of the Year. Doesn't look like that's going to be much of a reality anymore, but we still have Fast and the Furious, so I guess you never know with that. Basically, I'm saying maybe wait for Bakugan to hit like, I don't know, the $5 bin, the $1 bin, maybe it'll be free. Also, as we move towards the Xbox Series X and the PS5's release, we've been very curious about how some of these current gen games will function on SSDs and more powerful systems overall. Well, one of these examples was shared online, and you can see this tweet here. This was from Xbox News saying, on Xbox Series X, even without optimization, fast travel in The Witcher 3 is fast, showing them essentially teleporting around the map where you usually get some sort of load screen for a bit. The Xbox Series X seems to power through it to the point where it doesn't even load things up correctly because the game is just confused as to data that's being thrown at it. That's one of the things we've talked about with optimization overall going to these newer systems. At times, the game doesn't expect some of this with how fast the SSDs are going to be in the PS5, and yes, even the Series X. I know the Series X SSD is slower than the PS5, but it is significantly faster than what is in the Xbox One, the One X, the One S, doesn't matter. It's just way faster, and we're seeing that now in some of these examples that are being put out there, but like The Witcher 3 is going to be a very interesting one to see because we know that CD Projekt Red is going to be doing an optimization next-gen patch for it, and I gotta say, I have a feeling frame rate, visuals, load times, it's all gonna be on point, and it's gonna be a good one to go back to test your new system. Oh, and it looks like GameStop came up with a really good idea to raise morale in their stores. They're holding a competition. Or basically a dance competition on TikTok where I guess you'll just post your best choreographed moves and all of this in sync with music, with friends or any of that. And it looks like they had some pretty good prizes set up for it. Let's take a look here. You can see we have a $100 Visa gift card, and then we have an Echo 8, Echo Auto, pretty cool, and 10 additional labor hours to use during Black Friday week. And they say, imagine what you could do with all those prizes. That's right. 10 additional hours during Black Friday week. Probably the worst week of the year to actually work at a store is Black Friday week. It's just mayhem. I mean, if you worked retail at all, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Most people will avoid Black Friday week on the schedule if they can, although a lot of times everyone's on call anyway for it, and most time all hands on deck, because if you're at like Walmart or some of the other places, they're open through Thanksgiving. Thankfully, not so much this year, but still, they're giving away hours. Like, they could have cut it at like the gift card and Echo 8. It's like, all right, cool. And they're like, oh yeah, 10 additional hours during Black Friday week. Thanks for that, GameStop. I'm sure everyone's real excited for that part of the gift. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the Nintendo Switch emulator that pushed things a bit too far for something that is supposed to be free open source and not really infringe overall on what Nintendo is trying to do. A lot of times emulators can skate this line and stay legal if they are not using code that Nintendo has copywritten. That's how it works. They reverse engineer, they figure it out, and they leave it all out there open source so that they can prove that it is all their own unique code. But then we get into the business aspect of certain things, and Yuzu decided to introduce an online service that would basically act like what Nintendo is technically charging for right now with their Nintendo Switch Online service. This is what they posted up earlier in the day. Yes, you read that right. Yuzu now has beta support for online services by leveraging Raptor Network. Raptor Network is a replacement for Nintendo Online Services, which Yuzu has partnered with to deliver this service to you. Right now, Raptor Network only supports 2 games, Super Mario Maker 2 and Super Mario Odyssey. In Super Mario Maker 2, you can upload and share custom levels with others, while in Super Mario Odyssey, you can play hide and go seek in Luigi's Balloon World or share high scores in mini games on the leaderboards. Reverse engineering new games is an arduous task, but the service is in continuous development, so keep your eyes peeled for future updates. And then from there, they went a step further. It appeared to only make it available initially to anyone who subscribed to their Patreon account, which is still something that's kind of a gray area in general for emulators, because technically then people are supporting and paying for the development of this tool, and you can argue, oh, they just want to back the developers for it. Everything there is still open source, and people can, of course, look at the code and prove that, but then you bring money into the situation, and it's like, is it good? Is it legal for that? Can Nintendo put up a case to say, hey, they're being paid to create something that infringes on our system? It's tough, but for the most part, Nintendo stayed away from that and even CMU, but now you're kind of taking away from one of the big things they have, which is a $20 a year online service for the Switch, and they're offering it technically for free, but also keep in mind behind that Patreon paywall. Either way, something must have clicked for them, because hours later, they decided to remove it. It was going pretty quick, it seemed anyway, because I saw the report, and then like not even that much later in the day, boom, update, we're taking this down. This is what they tweeted out. We are saddened to report that we have removed online support from Yuzu indefinitely and effective immediately. We apologize to our community for the confusion and disappointment surrounding this release, and especially those who are excited to try this feature. We have received valid and insightful feedback from our fans and members of the broader Switch and emulation communities. Truthfully, we are all just a bunch of enthusiastic people from around the globe who are genuinely excited about something we thought we could offer. In hindsight, we 100% understand your concerns. As always, we will continue working on other features and improvements within Yuzu to make it the best emulator we possibly can. Now, there's no straightforward reason given here, but it seems that people weren't happy that they took that and locked it behind their Patreon, and that seemed to hit a nerve with a lot of people in the community. But I have to imagine they also they weren't thinking too much about it, and they said, oh, this is cool, let's put that out there, we'll beta test with patrons, and hey, maybe in the future they would have opened it up for everyone, sure. But I feel like it went out there, and I don't think Nintendo necessarily hit them with a cease and desist right away, although a lot of these emulators, I'm sure, are really being looked at by Nintendo to see if there is any way they can, and who knows, maybe when something like this sprouts up, they're like, we can make a case against that, let's drag them through the legal system and basically ruin them. That's kind of the thing that a lot of like Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, they'll do that if they can, because the legal system a lot of times will work to bankrupt people before a big corporation. So I feel like it's possible, but I think there was just a lot of backlash against them, and they even stepped back and said, wait, are we even allowed to do this? So it went down pretty quickly. But if that was the case, they also could have just said, oh, okay, well, we shouldn't have locked it behind our Patreon. You guys are right. We're just going to go ahead and open it up then. But they didn't do that. So that's why I kind of feel like there was still some legal concern there, and for the most part, they've actually been skating along pretty well with Yuzu and its development, so maybe not rock the boat with Nintendo when it comes to their online service. Next up, let's talk about the Xbox Series S. It is the cheaper system at $300. The Series X will be $500, both releasing the same day next week, and we're all really excited. We're getting close to next generation PS5, Xbox Series systems releasing like 2 days apart within the same week. It'll be an expensive week, I think, for a lot of people, but an exciting one. But the Series S is a good way to get into next generation at a cheaper price. $300 is pretty good to get into the next gen with the SSD, of course, the better CPUs, and the overall more capable system that's pretty small. But pretty small isn't just for the form factor, it's for the SSD that is inside. On the box, it says 512 gigabytes, but after what we saw with the Series X going from a terabyte down to just over 800 gigabytes, there was some concern about the Series S. Well, it looks like we have that number now, as someone managed to get it a bit early, and you can see the Reddit post here. It says, received it 1 week early from the source Canada, feeling really lucky. Hope all of you receive it soon. And it looks like they posted up some images of it, and after a little bit, we figured out 364 gigabytes for games and apps, as they decided to share below in the comments of that Reddit thread. Yeah, 364 gigabytes that's not a lot. But of course, it has quick resume, and that's one of the reasons so much is partitioned for the Series X and this. Basically, with quick resume, it takes the game and it just dumps it on the SSD, and when it's ready to get it back, it just pulls it from the SSD. It's something we've, of course, had explained several times by Microsoft and even people who had the prototype units to do previews with. It's a cool feature, but like, that is quite a bit of space that is being reserved for that, and then, of course, the system and any other operations they want to hold on to space for. To me, I think that's one of the biggest spots they attempted to save money. Sure, they could have made a 1 terabyte Series S, absolutely, but I feel like they were like, well, let's just cut this SSD in half. That'll get us close. There's word that Microsoft is losing more money on that Series S than they are on the Series X, and I do believe it. Like $300 for a system like that is pretty good overall, because we are seeing some games run at 120 frames per second. It is more of a 1080p box now, though, from what we're hearing, not necessarily 1440p as much, but for a lot of people, 1080p is fine. I think the biggest drawback for me is that it does not have a disk drive, so it is completely reliant on digital purchases, and I'm still on the physical bandwagon right now, but who knows, maybe in like 10 years there won't be physical games from what we're seeing with the trends right now. But yeah, you're gonna wanna, I guess, pick out some games that you're gonna be downloading that's not Call of Duty Warzone, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. That's a pretty big file, obviously, but the word is the Series S will be pulling smaller files because it doesn't need the massive files with high resolution and all this stuff, so we'll see. I guess if they can save on the quality of the assets, maybe that 364 gigs won't look as bad as it does on paper now. Hey, there's always that expansion slot on the back. It's just like $220 for a memory card that actually puts you above the Series X price. Next up, let's talk about Resident Evil Village. We saw it, of course, unveiled at the Sony event, and people have been very, very excited for this. It looks like it's gonna be targeting next generation heavily, and I was hoping to hear more about some of the things they would leverage on the systems, and would they use ray tracing, or would they do 4K? What would be the frame rate? A lot of questions around that. Well, it looks like the product page on Sony's website for Resident Evil Village did update with a lot of new details. Now, underneath the PlayStation 5 features, we can see it says stunning visuals, explore Resident Evil Village's beautiful yet terrifying vistas and locales in 4K with ray tracing. I want to point out they have a little star there next to 4K, which at the bottom in the fine italicized print says dynamic 4K and HDR require a compatible 4K and HDR compatible TV. So we are looking at dynamic 4K there with ray tracing, which is kind of expected with how expensive ray tracing can be in terms of performance. Fast loading, instantly pick up right where you left off with almost no load times, thanks to the power of PS5 console's ultra high-speed SSD. They will also be using the adaptive triggers, which to them means that the weight and pull of weapon triggers will be something you'll feel in those triggers. That is something I'm very interested to see how exactly that feels and how that will affect some of the gameplay, of course. And then haptic feedback, and something that I think could work really well for horror games is their Tempest 3D audio tech with their compatible headphones. Of course, they have the first-party one that they're selling, but they will also be working to bring it to just the overall speakers in your TV. Surround yourself with the carefully crafted music and sounds of survival horror in Resident Evil Village. 3D audio enhances the experience by making you feel the hair-raising sounds coming from every direction. And yeah, that would make horror games terrifying. If you're just sitting there with headphones on and you hear something behind you and you move around, that is something I'm looking forward to trying. That, the adaptive triggers, the advanced haptic feedback. There's a lot of things going into things other than just the visuals, but even the visuals, 4K, HDR, ray tracing. I do think Capcom's gonna put out a very impressive looking game here, just overall for next generation, especially what we've seen with current generation, like Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3. those games look really good. They look amazing. So like next generation with Resident Evil Village is gonna look absolutely crazy. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Activision. Of course, we just talked about Activision having some very confusing box art in Newswave for the Xbox One and the Xbox Series X, and how of course they're pushing their games up to $70, mostly because I guess the market is moving in that direction. So why not? But they also have their free-to-play games like Call of Duty Warzone and an insane amount of money that they are making from microtransactions, which I'm still confused. Do we really need this $70 jump in terms of price when these microtransactions are not gonna go away? Not when they're making this kind of money here. Check this out. This is from The Gamer. Activision Blizzard made over $1 billion from microtransactions in 3 months. That's not even in 3 months. Between the months of July and September, Activision Blizzard managed to pull in $1.2 billion. That's billion with a B from microtransactions alone. Now, I will say, over the past, half a year or so, people have really been at home a lot more, and we've just seen gaming in general spike when it comes to overall revenue. But like, you look at these numbers, this isn't new. Microtransactions make a lot of money. We've heard 800 million, we've heard $1 billion. That's been something in the past, but that's usually like over the course of a year. This was in 3 months. Call of Duty is very popular. Call of Duty is also gonna go up to $70. Call of Duty will still have those microtransactions. It does make you wonder how expensive these games like a Call of Duty has to be when you go to the store to buy it when they rake in this kind of money anyway, but like, that's why I said microtransactions can never go away for Activision. That's why EA is fighting the entire FIFA case so much in the Netherlands against their gaming committee with gambling and all of this. They don't want to lose that. So it's something to think about going to next generation. A $70 game isn't going to get rid of $1.2 billion in 3 months for microtransactions for some of these companies. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This says, the problem with digital is that you can't sell a game after you're done with it. It literally doesn't have the same value as a real copy. I 100% agree with that, but I think that's one of the biggest hurdles we need to get past when it comes to the overall digital side of things just overtaking physical completely and physical just going away. It's interesting to me that on the PC side, it was so accepted. However, keep in mind, you didn't really trade PC games in because you had a CD key that you would just punch in, and that was it. It was tied to your account, your CD, your computer, whatever it was. Whereas games, we've always traded in back and forth. It was more accepted overall. And now we're thinking about digital games taking over and just being it. Like, that's all you have when it comes to these consoles. If you go to a store like a Walmart or Best Buy, you're taking cards off the wall that has a little code that you scratch off, you take it to the register and you buy it there. The biggest thing here would be figuring out a way to identify each digital copy as either a limited amount or just its own identifying number. There's been talks before about using blockchain, different ways to make that a reality, but then we get to the point where digital games actually have a stock limit. It's weird because then digital games, I guess, could sell out, or they could just continue to, I guess, just print digital copies. It's weird to think about that, but that is something that people keep bringing up. You don't feel like you have any inherent value with a digital game because you can't physically hold it. But if they could, I guess, figure something out there, then people might be a bit more interested in just going all digital in the future. One way or the other, though, digital continues to climb. Physical continues to drop when it comes to sales, so eventually we'll get there. I hope we have something figured out in terms of overall ownership when it comes to this stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether it's the Yuzu emulator attempting to have their own online service that would function similar to what Nintendo is currently charging $20 a year for. Do you think Nintendo saw this and said, well, we can make a case against that, let's take it down? Or do you think Yuzu and their emulator and the team saw the backlash and kind of backed off a bit there? Let me know what you think happened exactly with that one. And then the Xbox Series S having about 364 gigabytes of free space available to you at launch. Is that enough? Or are you thinking, oh, maybe I should upgrade a bit to the Series X, or maybe I should look into one of those memory cards? Let me think about all that and more today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.